screen here and we will get started. I'll start with kind of an overview. Has anyone not seen BC at all?
No
So
hands raised.
Okay. Everyone's at least seen and at least looked at it once. Okay. So I won't go into kind of the details on the browser side, but we can talk through kind of how to navigate around on the different pages. Let me show a change here. I'm going to change my role from just our generic business manager, and let's go to our accounts receivable. Just because this is going to give you an idea, kind of the different views that you're going to have. We're going to set up these template home pages for different departments. So because I switched to an account receivables side, I now get some more information here on this lower section. So now it tells me how much overdue I have, my collection days. I've got my sales orders. This is on the receivable side, and I just realized I did that wrong. Let's go to the payables. Because we should also have a payables. Let's just go to an accountant. This will just be a more generic accountant view. So that settings button up at the top and me going to my settings, that's where you can make that change. Mostly that's going to be set on your user. So you should have that when you come in automatically. Okay. So now I've got a little bit more. I've got overdue purchase documents. I have purchase documents due today. Kind of get some more information in here. If I had purchase discounts that were available next week, so let's say I have a vendor who gives me a discount, this would update with all of that information. So kind of a nice to have little view with these tiles down below that gives me some overview on my overall process. Up here in the top menu, I'll reference this a number of times, but this is what I call global search. Microsoft calls it the Tell Me window. Basically, this is where I can search for any sort of document that I want to go to. So if I want to go into my vendor card and look at what the contact information that I have on vendors, I can just go up to my search, type in vendors, and it brings me into this page. To me, that's one of my favorite ways to maneuver around within BC. If I have to, so let's say I'm in all the way into a vendor card. If I want to go back to another view, another page, I can either click my back arrow 1, 2. If I'm in multiple pages, I could have to click that 5 or 6 times. That's one way to get back to my purchase invoices, for example. Or I can just come right up here, no matter what page I'm in, and jump right into purchase invoices. So a couple different ways of maneuvering around. That global search is my preferred way. It's generally the way I move around in BC, but you can get there a couple different ways. Okay. Clicking again on Smart Source at the top will refresh and take you back to your home page. So let's go into that vendor card and take a look at some of the different views on our vendors. For this group, we are working on consolidating our vendor list. You can see for Sanmar, we have 3 different vendors. We probably only need one. One came from SmartSource, one came from K-Smith on Logic, and one came from SmartBooks, I believe. So we are working on consolidating that in collaboration with the SmartSource team. So hopefully within a short amount of time here, we'll have one Sanmar that we can work with. But here's a good scenario. You've been working with Sanmar and you have a contact with them and you've been working with them and have a relationship. How do you maintain those contacts at the vendors? We can do that through the vendor contact page. So even if someone at SmartSource has been working with Sanmar for years and you've been working with someone else, we can maintain both of them in the same vendor card. So we'll move into contacts in just a minute here. Generic vendor card should be similar to kind of your existing systems where you have kind of a master record and then everything references that, the settings in here for anything related to a vendor. We did bring in under this DB VEN code, that is your old system vendor number. So those will stay in BC. You'll be able to take a look at that. If I was back here and I didn't want to search by name, I don't know why I wouldn't. I can still use that old vendor number in my search to pull up my vendor. So if you wanted to do it that way, I would highly recommend though, like I've done, just type in the name and you're going to find the one that you're looking for pretty quickly. That search works really well. All right, so let's go ahead and look at contacts. So within BC, a vendor always has one contact that is the vendor. And then underneath that vendor, we can create additional contacts with email, phone number, contact, title, etc., as related to that vendor. So all I have to do is click new. My number will auto assign if I just click out of that, and I can put in a name. So this is going to be Jacob. Whoa. Yeah. So Jacob is a contact. He is a person rather than a company. I can set companies inside of companies, but you generally wouldn't. He's a person. It shows here that he is a contact at Sanmar, and he will then be nested under that. I can then come down here and fill out an address, a phone number, if I can type it, and put in an email address. So this is kind of our way of keeping track of individual contacts within a vendor. We'll show here in a little bit of how those contacts are related to communication with your vendor. But this would be where you would start to include that information on the vendor card. If I back out, you can see that now Jacob is listed as a contact underneath Sanmar. At any time, I can come back in, see my contacts. I can choose who I wanted to. If I wanted to send an email or anything like that, I can do it from here. The nice thing about sending the email is BC tracks that. It keeps track of contacts and information that you've made with the individuals within BC. It also links right to your Outlook sent box. So any emails you send within BC, if you're logged in with your Microsoft account, will also show up in your Outlook sent folder.
Matt, quick question on that. So if it is linked, and you send it from BC and then someone replies, will you get that in your Outlook inbox or will it just be in BC?
It'll go into your Outlook.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Any other questions on contacts and kind of managing within a vendor?
You guys good? They're good.
Okay. Related to that, and we've done this kind of on the customer side, so I don't know if this is repetitive for you guys, but we'll walk through it quickly here. We have what's called document layouts, where I can then choose for each of the different usages. So a PO, a vendor remittance, and a return shipment. That on the vendor side, those are really the only options. I can choose who it's going to be sent to. So in this case, we will have this updated before you guys go live. I'm just going to grab purchase order. Where is my purchase order? There we go. Then I can choose what contact I want to send my purchase orders. So now I can say Jacob's going to get my purchase orders. When we look at purchasing, and I know you guys probably aren't doing the actual sending of purchase orders. If we do remittances or any sort of return orders, that would also be in there. But that's kind of the way we can manage who gets the contact when a document is sent from BC. And that is in this vendor card under document layouts. Okay. A couple other things on a vendor card. You can see here we have a balance. Anytime I'm in BC and I'm moving around and I see a number that's in that like teal green, and if I hover over it, it underlines, that means it's a link and I can click on it to open up more information. So from a high level, the way Business Central manages all of our documents and all of our transactions is in what's called ledger entries. You don't have to remember that. This one is specific to a vendor ledger. So at any time, all of my transactions related to a vendor accumulate into this ledger entries table. You don't need to be able to really understand or talk about why that happened. Just know that that's kind of the accumulation of transactions. What it does is it gives us all the information we need for that vendor and what our open and outstanding actions are. So in this case, from last month on the 20th, I have an invoice to Sanmar for a PO. Here's my PO number. And I show that I owe them the $367.80. I've got a due date on there. So when I posted the invoice for this vendor, my due date was 8/20. It's in red because it is past due. If I go back, you can see I've got a balance. I also have a balance due. These two fields are kind of the difference between all transactions and transactions that are past due. At any time, like I said, I can click on them to get the detail. Okay, we're going to come back to this because we're going to take a payment. We'll manage a payment on that and talk through how that works with the cash flow. Okay, so that's on the vendor side. We'll talk about billing. I will just point out, so you got contact. This is our generic contact. I should have specified this before I went into like the details of the individual people. You have a generic vendor contact. The email that is there in this field is the default email if nothing else is specified. So if you don't put in any sort of accounting person or a salesperson or whatever, the system will go and find the generic email on the vendor card. It's a good one to have just kind of a generic one, and then make sure you're specifying who it's going to when you send those emails, and I'll show you what that looks like. We do have a way to put our account number. So if in their system we have an account number that we want to specify, we can put this in here, and then when we send invoices or payments or other transactions, it will reference that account number as well. Might make their life a little bit easier. Okay. Last couple of things here on the invoicing side. All of your vendors need these two posting groups. They should all be set up. If you ever get in an error where it says, hey, I don't have a posting group or something like that, this is where that data lives, is on that vendor card. We will have all of that updated and ready for you. But if you are creating a new one, make sure these both will have a red asterisk on it that says that it is a required field.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So on the posting group and the vendor posting group, like there it says vendor and print promo. What will those say when we switch over?
Yep. So it'll say something similar. So our business posting group is just going to be, we really just have vendor customer. So all of our vendors will be under one vendor code for the business posting group. On the vendor posting group, we have a list of different types of vendors. So we're
Okay.
working on, as we consolidate that vendor list, we're working on assigning those vendors to one of these categories.
Okay. Because
From a,
right now, when I put in a vendor for payables, both of them say KSBG. So that was my question. I was just curious what that would look like. So there'll be actual things to choose from, depending on the vendor.
yeah, so what is the code that you do now? What does that mean?
Both of them say KSBG, which is Case Smith Business Graphics.
Okay. Does that link to anything? Does that tie to like bank accounts or any sort of, is it kind of
No, it doesn't.
informational? Okay.
It was just something that they set up that way.
All right. Yeah.
It wasn't set up well.
Yeah, there was multiple entities, so that's the one that we just used for K Smith. Because isn't there one for Alex as well, the business?
That's got little to nothing for this side.
So it looks like we're going more detailed depending on what it's for, like if it's a, PSE probably would fall under utilities, and then maybe the taxes that I send over for that would fall under taxes. Is that how you guys use this category? To
Yeah,
see
that's
where
the
your
idea.
spending is?
Yep. So
Okay.
from a high level, it actually doesn't change anything. When you post and do all these transactions, this posting groups, we have them all going to the same general ledger accounts. So it's not going to make a difference in where it's posted on the GL. What it does give us is the ability to report on it so that when we do look at spending or category, different things, payables, we can filter and get reporting by these categories.
Yeah, I think for our team, most of ours should be print and promo, because we're only entering in invoices that are related to an order. And I think Jennifer would probably handle the rest of it between Jennifer and Philip.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of your operating expenses and everything else. Yeah, so we will get those assigned. So it should come in and look just like this automatically. I just wanted to point out because it is a key field that will throw lots of errors in the system if you don't have it set up properly, so that you at least can go and find where that problem is. Okay. We'll take a look at payment terms. So I'll go ahead and open this up just to show kind of the overall list of payment terms. We've done a little bit of consolidation, merging yours and SmartSource's and the two versions that SmartSource had into kind of one big payment terms table. This table is used on both the payables and the receivables side. So it is literally just a calculation that the system is going to use of how to calculate the due date and any discount that would be available. You can kind of see the format here with a percent and then the net days if there's a discount. And then down below, we have just our standard net days.
But Jack talked, they're gonna start slow.
And so all of your vendors should be updated with what the payment terms that you had in your old system and assigned to the relevant one here within BC. So this vendor is set to 30-day terms. We'll talk in a little bit about discounts when we look at outstanding and what's the word I'm looking for? Available discounts. So again, we'll set that up. All your vendors should have it automatically. If you need to change it, this is where it lives, is that payment terms code. And any transactions. So let me say this, when you make a change, this is probably the same as your current system. When you make a change on the vendor card, all future transactions will have that change. If you need to review existing invoices that are already out there, you would have to go to those individual invoices and update them as well. So let's say you went to 60-day terms with Sanmar. Any invoices that were posted in the last 30 days, we'd have to manually change those to 60 if that's what we're going to do.
So if the orders are still open and we change the vendor card, we're on the vendor, it will update all the new ones that come to, because I guess I was jumping ahead. I was thinking of customer invoices, because on the customer card, when we update, like, let's say the sales rep changes, we, in SmartBooks, the way it works is we have to go into each existing order that's already created and update all those. Will BC update all those orders that were placed if we update the customer card?
Now we would have to go in and manually change them, just like in.
Darn it. Okay.
Yeah. There's always ways around it. There are like a mass update we could do. I can show you. There's a couple tricks we can do to work around that. Just a general rule. Hani, myself, Rachel, our team, we're not going anywhere. So even when you start using this in a real environment, if you get into something, you're like, man, that's going to take me a while. Raise your hand, ask a question, because there's probably a trick or a shortcut that we can help you with. Don't spend a lot of time just manually doing things. If you can help it, ask us, and we'll see if there's a way we can help.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The other part on the payment side is we have a payment method code. So this is how we want to have the system tell us how we're going to be making payments to this vendor. So if it's an ACH, if it's a credit card, check, etc., we can set those. This is informational and something that we can filter on. I'll show when we do a payment journal, we can set and say, oh, I want to run all my ACH vendors in this batch. That's what the field you would be looking at is this payment method code. It would grab all vendors that are assigned ACH and then would build a list of transactions that you would need to make in that ACH batch. I know there's talk of how the banking side and everything else is going to happen. I'm not going to go into that. Just from kind of the way BC is structured, that is kind of the way that we can group our vendors for payments. I know we're working on a check layout. There's a couple of things with kind of the check date and the separator format. I would imagine we could just use the default for most everything. I don't think we'll need a big difference between different vendors for how the check is sent. One more note on here, just because the field's here, currency code. Keep your currency code blank as the default. When our whole system is set up that USD, US dollars, is our currency code. So if we leave it blank, then it defaults to our system currency code. If you have to make an exception, that's when you put it in there. But if you put USD on this one, it's going to throw a bunch of errors. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. Anytime you see a currency code, if it's dollars, just leave it blank and the system will do all the work to manage that.
Is there any way to suppress that so people don't go in and put in USD?
We can make that not visible. If you stay in your show less view of this section, it will not show up. But yeah, we can basically hide it, but the field's still there.
Got it.
Couple other things on the vendor card. You've got this information pane over on the right. If I want to show it, I just click the eye with a circle or hide it. That gives me a little more screen real estate. I get some nice little details in here with my statistics, where I get my total, my outstanding balance, what orders I have open, anything that's overdue. Again, all of these are links. So I could click on this and be like, oh, I have these many POs open. So this is purchase lines to this vendor. So kind of nice little shortcuts as I move around. In this lower section here, same sort of thing. I've got a tile for every kind of document. I've got 5 quotes out to this vendor. I've got 4 orders, 1 posted receipt, 1 posted invoice. I can click on that and it will pull me right into that posted purchase invoice for that vendor. Okay. Any questions on kind of vendors, navigation, moving around inside of BC?
So when we go live, I guess, so where it says attachments, is that where we would be attaching the vendor invoices?
So on the actual invoice card, yes. Here, we're just in the vendor itself. So this would
Okay.
be kind of generic vendor information.
So that's where typically Jill would put the W-9 in the banking information from the customer, or for the vendor.
Okay.
At the card level.
Yes.
So can we go back to one of the invoices that we paid? Would it have an attachment?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
So here is the posted purchase invoice. Yeah, then I could come in and add that attachment there.
Matt, what's the current timeline for Katina?
End of year. Yeah, so do you want to explain that, or you want me to? Kind of what the benefit will be?
No, I was just wondering what the timeline was for, right now we use DocuWare, where the documents are, you send an email and it reads it and attaches it to the invoice. So we have a new program that's built into Business Central. So as it comes through, it'll be attached to an email address. So if our vendors send into that email address, it'll scan the PDF and then apply it directly to the invoice. So after that's live, most of the vendor invoices are going to automatically be attached in there when you go in. Same as customer invoices.
Yeah, there's some real neat features in there of
So
Yeah,
it'll manage all
OCR.
these documents for you. All I have to do is send it to an email address and it'll read the invoice and then apply.
What volume of invoices should they be scanning and manually attaching? Or payable, I mean, are we
You don't really scan them. They come in your email mostly, but you can scan them as well.
to just throwing them over from email?
Yeah, just
There's a decent chunk of things that come in with the mail.
Like currently scanning and attaching everything digitally?
Yes, so, but I mean, there's like, there's a small stack of, that I have to go through again to put in. And it's usually things like utilities,
Oh, yeah.
and then there's a few other random things that.
Yeah, so I will show, and we'll do it. We'll go ahead and do it now, of posting it manually. And many improvements to come with that process. Okay, so let's move into the invoicing. You'll hear me use a couple different terms from a high level, and I've mentioned this to a couple of people that are in the room about 100 times. But the way BC handles any sort of transaction, there's always 2 steps. On an outbound order, first we do the shipment and then we invoice the customer. On inbound, we first receive the inventory and then we invoice the inventory, which creates the payable to the vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and show you on the purchase order side how we post the invoice from a vendor. Okay. So purchase orders are anything related to a vendor, anything related to inventory coming in or services coming in to our company. It could be billed directly to the customer eventually, but we have to manage the vendor side first. And that's always going to be on a purchase order or a purchase invoice. And we'll talk about the difference there in just a minute. But let me show, so on a purchase order, let me just open up one of our open purchase orders. Oh, from Jagger's vendor. Purchase order, I've got my header, which kind of gives me my vendor information with the address. This is a PO that has just been sent. It has not been received. If I come down into the lines section, I can scroll over in here. I've got two items, 10 of each, $25 each. Oh, this one is a good example. Great. This one has been received. So there are 4 fields on this line section that are the key to knowing the status of this order. Quantity to receive is what has not been received yet. It will be received. And then quantity received is the past tense. So in this case, we've already received these 10 of each item. And then I've got the quantity to invoice and the quantity that has been invoiced. So it's a kind of a 4-step process. You have to receive it before you can invoice it. Once you receive it, it moves to received, then it can be invoiced and moved here. So this is an in-process one where we've already received the inventory. This one came into our Renton warehouse. If I look at my location code, I'm assuming that's the case. Yeah, came into Renton warehouse. And I am ready to create my vendor invoice. So ideally at this point, I got an email from the vendor that said, yep, I shipped you 10 of each of these 2 items at $25 each. Here's your invoice. First one I'm going to do is the simplest version, which is the price matches, quantity matches, everything's great. All I have to fill out is I have to put in my vendor invoice number. So they sent me an invoice and this is the number. And then I need to update the posting date. So the posting date within BC is the key field that determines the due date and all of the transactions related to it. Now,
Why
this,
isn't the date?
Say that again.
Why wouldn't the document date figure the payment terms and everything?
Let me just double check and make sure I'm saying this correctly. It does. Yep. So in a PO, the document date is, you're correct. That's the date for the for calculating terms. So if I change this to 8/25, gives me an error. Let's see, I got a payment terms error. So let me change that. Yeah, this is our old one. So let's change this to 60. I can remember how we called them. If I make a change and I get an error, this is just good practice in here. I get this red bar that says page has 2 errors. If I want to see what the error is, I have to hover over this little red X that tells me what the problem is. And it says validating payment terms code revealed a problem in field status. So my problem is I've already released this purchase order, which means I cannot make a change. I have to reopen it before I make that change. I can click on that refresh, clears my error. I can then reopen my PO. So this is what we're talking about. If you make a change to the payment terms, the open orders do not get changed automatically. So now I can come in here, change this to my net 60. And then I can re-release my purchase order, which changed my status here. All right, good. So now my payment terms are calculating correctly. So I've got a document date of 8/20, my due date of 10/19 for my 60-day terms. So let me back up on dates again. Document date is what date I am using for the calculation of my terms and my due dates. My posting date is what date I'm posting the invoice to that account so that I get a record of when that is applied and I have that information. So that I would use today. Shortcut that I can use, I can put a T to get today's date. If I want to just do a number, it will apply the current month. If I want to specify a month and a date, I just have to specify 8/31. and it will automatically apply the year. So there's a couple different ways. Dates are really flexible in BC. You can use dots, dashes, slashes, however you want to format it, and it interprets it pretty well.
Which field drives if it's gonna show up in the AP aging? As an
Due date.
outstanding invoice? Which one?
Document date and due.
No, like. So if you put in 9/4 in posting date, will that invoice show up on the 8/31 AP aging?
No.
No.
Will it? 'Cause I thought it's gonna look at everything posted through 8/31.
So
That's the accounting document date. That's really the date that matters.
Yeah, I mean, at month end, we change it so we can put stuff back in.
Yeah. So that, because you don't, I mean, otherwise that posting date would just be the day you're posting it to the
Yeah.
GL, but that's.
And throughout the month, that's what we do, because that's fine.
Yeah.
But then, like right now, we're still getting August invoices. We change it to August 31st, so it's posting into August.
Okay. So
Yes.
the document would match the invoice date,
Yes,
but the posting date is period sensitive.
yes.
Should make sure.
The posting date is the universal date. It's gonna hit the AP subledger, which also means it hits the GL subledger. There is no time delay between the posted PI, the AP vendor ledger entry, and the GL entry. Really, the posting date is king, whether you like it or not. And then the due date is just calculated based on that, based on the payment terms code. And running a report, running our HDP report or any kind of report out of native BC is all based on the posting date. But then the HDP report gives you options to say, I don't want to run my HDP filter on that. Give it to me by the document date. So you can do extra fancy filtering, but an HDP report is all based on posting date. Does that help?
Yeah. That's what I was looking for.
You can just Matt, you can just pull up the mem HDP report, or it might not work right now, but
yeah.
I'll show you all this, guys. I'll show you this later. It's fine.
So simplest version, again, if I got an invoice, and this is basically what that inbound PDF reader is going to do, is it's going to grab the date, the invoice number, validate the amounts. If everything matches, I can go ahead and post. So posting in this scenario is going to take this quantity to invoice, and it's going to create an invoice for these amounts, or these quantities and this amount. It's right here with my post, and I choose to invoice. I think it's going to throw an error, but we will see if it lets us. It let us go through. Great. Okay, so I get a message. This order is posted as number. This is posted invoice here, and is now the posted purchase invoice. Here is the order. If I hit yes, this is what is now a payable on my vendor ledger. It's due on the 10th, I think. What was the 10th? 19th of October. And I've got my invoice number. So now come October, I'll have that as a payable that I can, when I run my check run, basically, it'll be in there. Okay, so that is the simplest version of posting a vendor invoice. As soon as I do that on this specific purchase order, it closed out the order because every line was posted and invoiced. It's been received and invoiced, and it moved it into my purchase order archive. So I have a separate table in here that is called purchase order archives. Oh, it didn't archive it. I don't think I turned that on yet. Yeah, but if I look at all of my Jaggers POs, I should not have my $500 one. Yep, it's gone. So it closed out and removed that purchase order from my list. So that's, if you're seeing outstanding POs out there and you're like, why do I still have a PO out there? You have to have all the items all the lines received and invoiced, and then the system will archive that purchase order. Okay, that's the easiest process. Let's do another one that's received. So I've got this little handy filter over here where I can look at different views. I can look at all my POs, upcoming, outstanding, partially invoiced, and anything that I have received, not invoiced. From an accounting side, this is really where I live. This is stuff that the warehouse has said that they've received, and we've gotten notification back, but I have not posted the invoice with the vendor invoice in there. So let's go ahead and open up another one in here.
Hey, Matt, can you create multiple invoices for one order?
Yes.
Could we try one of those? Because we do have those where they want them split.
And the
Like by
split would
location,
be,
like one might have gone to the US and one might have gone to, I don't know, Canada.
We do have another call at 11 o'clock, you guys, so we might need to pick this back up tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
so what I can do is I can partially invoice. I can do it by line or I can do it by quantity. So in this case, let's say this was a partial shipment and they shipped 6 and then 6. We've received all 12, but I need a separate invoice for the first 6 and a separate one for the last 6. So I can just change my quantity to invoice there. As long as I've received it, as long as my quantity is less than or equal to what's been received, I can invoice a partial. I would put in my invoice number, such and such, -1, or whatever they had as the invoice. And I can update my posting date. And then when I go to invoice, it will create an invoice for 6 of these items rather than all 12. Same thing goes if I had a dozen lines in here, I could override the default quantity and only invoice the parts that I want to, that I got on that invoice. One
So will
note,
the costs follow along as well?
Perfect.
'Cause-
that's what I was just gonna say. So the trick here is this subtotal amount. This is the order amount, not the invoice amount. So my total line amount is 420 because $35 each and I've done 12, but I'm only invoicing 6. So my invoice is only going to be for 210. The way I can check that is I change my quantity here, and then I go to order statistics. And this is where I can calculate how much my invoicing amount is right here. So my order is for 420, my invoice is 210. This is where you do that check of saying, hey, this is the invoice, this is what I'm going to post.
No, how about the cost, like the vendor cost that's associated, like the purchase order? Does that get broken up as well?
You could, so what would be the scenario? You get some at a different price than others?
Well, no, just to split it because we pay commissions based on gross profit. So like, for instance, for SmartBooks, the way we have to do it is we have to calculate what the cost is for each invoice and manually associate it to that invoice. Is there a way that it just knows that basically it just takes half of the purchase order and associates it to the one invoice for 6 and the other one, does it know, or do we have to manually put that in there?
So the system will manage all of that using first in, first out logic. So we can talk about how that applies.
Okay.
The system's going to do all the work there. Basically, what you have to do is, in order that you receive them, then you update that cost to whatever the invoiced cost was coming in from the vendor.
To play around with that?
Yeah, and if you have a scenario where you want to kind of walk through that and see if we can answer questions on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have another call we've got to jump to. Different group of people.
But we can pick this back up tomorrow, right?
Yep. We'll pick up here and continue on.
Great. And if you guys have questions, send them my way. And then I'll relay them to the team here.
Do you ever have the inverse of one vendor invoice applying to multiple POs? And then So that could be a future, just put that on.
Yep, we can walk through that.
Yeah, so
I would
so
imagine
then
it
have to
happens.
show how to do that if we have multiple POs open with one invoice to apply.
Sure. Yep, we can do that.
All right, thanks you guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.